On April 2nd, 2026, the Associated Press confirmed that thousands more United States troops are heading to the Middle East. Aircraft carrier strike groups, squadrons of stealth fighters, and thousands of Marines are being funneled into the Persian Gulf. The official narrative from the Pentagon is one of deterrence. They call it a defensive posture. They claim it is about protecting international law and the freedom of navigation. That is the illusion. The structural reality is that Washington is being drawn into a strategic trap. Let us peel back the first layer of the onion. The deployment of thousands of troops is not a sign of strength. It is a confession of vulnerability. In the theater of strategic realism, more targets do not equal more security. They equal more risk. The United States has spent 80 years building a military designed for the open ocean and the wide sky. They built $13 billion aircraft carriers to dominate the high seas. They built stealth jets to defeat peer adversaries in high-altitude dogfights. But today, they are facing an adversary that does not play that game. Iran does not need to sink the entire United States Navy to win. They only need to make the cost of staying in the water higher than the American political system can tolerate. Thousands more United States troops are heading to the Middle East. This is the headline, but the mathematics behind it are brutal. To move 10,000 troops, you require a massive logistical tail. You need fuel, you need food, you need ammunition, you need medical support. Each of these requirements is a new vulnerability. Each supply ship is a slow-moving target. Each forward base is a fixed coordinate on an Iranian targeting map. In the narrow, shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, geography has turned the most advanced fleet in history into a collection of very expensive targets. The mainstream media focuses on the hardware. They talk about the power of the Ford-class carriers. They discuss the range of the F-35 jets. But geography is the god of this conflict, and geography favors the coastline. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Imagine a $13 billion aircraft carrier. It is over 1,000 feet long. It carries 5,000 personnel. In the open ocean, it is a fortress. In a 21-mile-wide bathtub, it is a target. Iran possesses thousands of smart mines. They have hundreds of fast attack boats. They have coastal missile batteries hidden deep within limestone cliffs. You cannot use stealth to hide a carrier in a choke point. You cannot use precision to stop a swarm of $20,000 drones. The United States is currently firing interceptor missiles that cost $3 million each. They are using them to stop drones that cost less than a used car. This is not a military exchange. It is a bankruptcy proceeding. For every dollar Iran spends to put a threat in the air, the United States must spend $100 to remove it. That is not a mission. It is a liquidation. The board is shifting, and Washington is playing a losing hand. Now, consider the second-order effects. This is the second layer of the onion. The deployment of these troops is happening at a moment of extreme fiscal and political fragility inside the United States. The federal deficit for 2026 is already projected to be historic. Adding the cost of a massive, open-ended military deployment in the Middle East is a recipe for a structural economic crisis. When the news reports on troop movements, they do not talk about bond yields. They do not talk about the petrodollar, but we must. The American global hegemony rests on a single unspoken deal. The United States provides security for the Gulf, and the Gulf sells oil in dollars. This creates a permanent demand for the American currency. It allows Washington to borrow money at rates that no other nation could dream of. But that deal is currently burning. If the thousands of troops being sent to the region cannot stop Iranian missiles from striking Kuwaiti refineries or Saudi desalination plants, then the security deal is dead. If Washington cannot guarantee the safety of the oil flows, the Gulf nations have no reason to stick to the dollar. Iran is already demanding payment for transit in Chinese yuan. This is the beginning of a systemic shift. The weapon is not the missile. The weapon is the price of oil. Every time an Iranian drone forces a United States carrier strike group to reposition, the maritime insurance companies in London raise their rates. When the insurance rates go up, the tankers stop moving. When the tankers stop moving, the price of gasoline at your local station jumps 30%. This is the domino effect. A drone launch in the Persian Gulf leads directly to a political crisis in Washington. Donald Trump campaigned on the promise of energy dominance. He promised to bring fuel prices down. Instead, he has launched a war that is institutionalizing an energy depression. The midterm elections are only months away. Every gallon of gas that costs $7 is a vote lost for the administration. This is why the deployment is so desperate. Washington is trying to buy time. They are trying to show resolve to an audience that is no longer convinced. They are sending thousands of young men and women into a geographical trap to protect a financial system that is already cracking. This is not a strategy. It is a gamble with the national future. The mainstream media says the troops are there to deter Iran. Let us look at the cold logic of deterrence. Deterrence only works if the adversary believes that the cost of acting is higher than the cost of doing nothing. For 40 years, Iran has been sanctioned. They have been isolated. They have been threatened. They have nothing left to lose. An adversary with nothing to lose cannot be deterred by another aircraft carrier. In fact, the deployment of more troops creates more incentives for Iran to escalate. Each new base is a new target. Each new ship is a new opportunity for a victory of the small against the large. Iran understands the mechanics of power in the 21st century. They know that a single video of a burning American ship is worth more than 1,000 successful American airstrikes. They are fighting for survival and geography. Washington is fighting for prestige and a failing currency. In the history of warfare, geography and survival always win. The official narrative is a script. The structural reality is a liquidation. Now, let us look at the third layer of the onion, the succession of power in Tehran. On February 28th, the United States strikes killed the old supreme leader. The Central Intelligence Agency thought they were creating a power vacuum. They thought the regime would implode. They predicted a popular uprising within days. They were wrong. Instead of an uprising, the United States has produced a hardline consolidation. The successor, Mojtaba Khamenei, is younger, more radical, and far more vengeful than his father. The deployment of more American troops is exactly what he needs to unify the country. It provides a visible, external enemy. It justifies the economic pain of the population. It turns a political struggle into a civilizational war. Washington thought they were removing a leader. In reality, they were removing the only person who had the authority to negotiate. They have replaced a survivor with a zealot, and they are now sending thousands of troops to face the consequences of that mistake. To strike the head and leave the body intact is not a victory. It is a provocation. The United States is currently trapped in a strategic cul-de-sac. If they withdraw, they lose their global credibility. If they stay, they continue a war of attrition that they cannot win mathematically. And if they escalate further, they risk a total regional conflagration that would destroy the global economy. None of these are good options. The mainstream news will tell you that the mission is nearing completion. They will show you footage of jets taking off from carrier decks. They will quote generals who talk about operational success. But the truth is found in the logistics. It is found in the empty missile tubes. It is found in the rising cost of shipping. The board has shifted. The era of American naval dominance in the Gulf is ending, not because of a lack of courage, but because of the reality of physics and finance. That is not an opinion. That is the New World Order. The deployment of thousands more troops is presented by the White House as a closing move. But the structural reality in the Arabian Sea tells a different story. It is the story of an aircraft carrier strike group that is currently absorbing the consequences of a war it was never designed to win. Let us look at the mathematics of saturation. This is the core of the Iranian strategy. On March 25th, Donald Trump made a statement that should have ended the career of his entire communications team. He claimed that 101 Iranian missiles were fired at the United States ship Abraham Lincoln. He claimed that 100% were intercepted. In the world of physics, this is a lie. In the theater of strategic realism, it is a confession of vulnerability. The Aegis combat system is a marvel of engineering. It is a multi-billion-dollar shield, but it is a finite shield. To intercept 101 missiles, you must launch at least 101 interceptors. You must achieve 101 simultaneous radar locks. You must manage 101 terminal engagements. Saturation is not a choice. It is a law of physics. When you launch more incoming threats than the defense system can track, the shield fails. Even if the success rate was 95%, 5 missiles would have hit the carrier. 5 missiles would have turned a $13 billion asset into a burning monument to American overreach. Washington is claiming a perfect score while the smoke is still visible from space. The second-order effect of this engagement is the liquidation of the interceptor stockpile. Every Patriot missile costs over $4 million. Every terminal high-altitude area defense interceptor costs $12 million. Iran is using missiles that cost $50,000. This is a bankruptcy proceeding disguised as a naval battle. The United States is burning through years of production in weeks. We are seeing a strategic inversion where the most expensive military in history is being bled dry by the most cost-effective one. This is not a victory. It is a mathematical liquidation. Now, let us examine the strategic paradox of the alliance with the United Kingdom. Donald Trump recently published a comedy sketch mocking British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He portrayed his closest ally as a coward. He did this hours before asking the Royal Navy to help clear mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a failure of leadership that will have consequences for a generation. The United States Navy lacks the specialized mine-clearing capability required for the shallow waters of the Strait. The Royal Navy possesses that capability. It is the one thing Washington needs and cannot buy. To publicly humiliate the leader of the only nation willing to help you is a strategic error of the highest order. Germany has already called the mine-clearing mission a suicide operation. France has negotiated a separate peace. Italy and Spain have declined to participate. The United Kingdom was the last partner standing. By turning the British Prime Minister into a punchline, Trump has converted a partnership into a submission. Leverage is not cooperation, and a humiliated ally is a useless ally. The reality behind the curtain is that the special relationship is dead. It has been replaced by a transaction, and the cost of that transaction is the loss of American credibility across the entire European theater. Let us look at the economic heart of this conflict. The news reports focus on the energy crisis. They speak of a return to the 1970s. But this is far worse than the 1970s. In 1973, the disruption was a political choice by the oil-producing nations. In 2026, the disruption is a physical reality of the battlefield. When the refineries in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia are taken offline, the capacity to process oil does not just stop, it is destroyed. When Qatar Energy suspended its natural gas production, the energy lifeline of Europe was severed. This is not a negotiation. It is an attrition of the global supply chain. The petrodollar is the air that Washington breathes. It is what allows the United States to run a debt of $34 trillion. But the petrodollar requires two things. Oil must be sold in dollars, and the United States must protect the oil. Right now, the United States cannot protect the oil, and Iran is demanding payment in Chinese yuan to transit the strait. This is the end game of the conflict. If the world no longer needs dollars to buy energy, the American economy becomes a house of cards. The petrodollar was built on the promise of security. That promise is currently sinking in the Persian Gulf. The American consumer is seeing the first signs of this collapse at the gasoline pump. $7 a gallon is not just a high price, it is a political earthquake. Trump is deploying more troops because he has a midterm election in November. He needs the war to appear under control before the economy destroys his party. But Tehran is not operating on a political calendar. They are operating on a civilizational timeline. They have seen the Zoom war. The New York Times has reported that United States military personnel are being relocated from their bases to hotels in Europe. They are conducting operations remotely. Let that sink in. American soldiers are managing a live combat operation via video call from hotel rooms because the bases they were stationed at are no longer safe. This is not the behavior of a superpower in control. It is the language of improvisation under duress. The superpower is retreating into a digital bunker. The final layer of the onion is the survival strategy. Iran has realized that they do not need to sink the fleet. They only need to outlast the American political tolerance for pain. Every day the war continues, the cost to Washington increases. Every day the strait remains closed, the petrodollar weakens. Iran is winning by not losing. The United States is losing by not winning. Trump says the objectives are nearing completion, but he has achieved none of his primary goals. The Iranian regime is more unified than ever. The nuclear program is now a strategic necessity for their survival. The regional allies of the United States are looking for a way out. The United States is declaring victory while the foundations of its power are being liquidated. The successor problem remains the most dangerous unintended consequence. Mojtaba Khamenei is watching the American retreat. He is seeing the exhaustion of the interceptor stockpiles. He is seeing the failure of the maximum pressure campaign. He is the one who will define the post-war order in the Middle East. And he has no interest in the Western version of peace. The mainstream narrative is a distraction. They want you to focus on the podiums and the press conferences, but the reality is found in the tanker tracking data. It is found in the empty missile tubes of the destroyers. It is found in the rising yields of the bond markets. The board has shifted. The geography has asserted its dominance. And the official version of the war is entering its final phase only because the official version has lost its grip on reality. The architecture of deterrence has been tested, and it has failed. As we move into the next phase of this conflict, the question is no longer about Iran. The question is about the United States. How much of its global credibility is it willing to sacrifice to maintain the illusion of power? The answer will be found in the coming months as the midterms approach and the bills for this war finally come due. The world is watching, the allies are recalibrating, and the geography remains, as always, the only God that does not change its mind. Behind the narrative, the structural reality is a liquidation of the old order. The official narrative is an illusion designed for the crowd. The structural reality belongs to those who perceive the strategic shift behind the curtain. Gain the information advantage by looking beyond the surface and position yourself ahead of the coming global reconfiguration.